I'd just like to share, hopefully briefly, just a few thoughts on the law of group elevation and the role that it can play in redemption, specifically in a group sense in terms of all of humanity. And those of us that don't know or who are just tuning in, the keynote of our conference deals with the law of group elevation and the forces of creative life. Humanity stands today on the precipice of what you could say is a great renewal, or an elevation, or a birth. And this birth will culminate in the raising of human consciousness from the death of materialism into the life of soul consciousness. In a variety of crises in the life of humanity, some of which we are experiencing quite obviously, others which may be quite subtle, are all heralding this shift and preparing humanity for the birth of this new culture. This culture will be predicated on spiritual values, on morals, on sharing, and on goodwill, but it is being brought about, that is caused by the application of the spiritual will, focused through that great planetary center we call hierarchy, or the spiritual heart of our planetary life, and expressed through the new group of world servers. And students of esotericism are well placed to understand the occult origins of this coming shift and to cooperate with these energies as a group. To contribute to this hierarchical endeavor is a privilege afforded to those who have assumed the responsibilities of discipleship living and have prioritized spiritual service above individual gratification. And in doing so, they give living form to the spiritual qualities of the soul while remaining free from the materialistic and selfish tendencies endemic to human living. And they tread the way from individual consciousness, which is characterized by pain, attachment, limitation, and death, into the consciousness of the soul, which is love, relationship, and life, and which still has its own sense of individuality, which is one with the group. For the soul knows itself to be one with the group and with the soul underlying all forms. Thus, the will of the soul seeks the working out of group purpose rather than the working out of the desires and ambitions of the separated self. Sacrifice is really just the application of the will to that which is larger than the individual self. And it is through sacrifice that the limitations of individuality are relinquished and the personality becomes a vehicle of the soul, consecrated to the greater good. It is through this process of consecration that the unity of the subjective realms expresses through a diversity of forms, that the consciousness is elevated into the abode of the self, and that the oneness of life is glorified through each of its expressions. This elevation into the soul, into the group, imparts to the individual certain powers, notably the ability to pierce behind the veil, to see the unseen, and to know the plan, and to work for its furtherance, and to cooperate with the underlying evolutionary forces which impel this plan towards actualization. In this way, the soul-conscious individual becomes a path of descent for spiritual energies and a linking agent between heaven and earth. It is through becoming this bridge, the radiant way, the path of salvation, that spiritual realities become expressed facts in the realm of human living. Yet this bridge that the soul-infused personality becomes is only one small strand of a planetary bridge, constructed by countless individuals who have sought and found alignment, enlightenment upon our planet. And as the individual bridge is constructed, as the individual learns to kind of become the path for others, the soul increasingly and automatically becomes merged with the group, with group purpose, and therefore increasingly also becomes one with God's plan. It is via this planetary bridge, this group bridge, that the energies of renewal find entrance into the phenomenal world, elevating humanity and all life forms. And this bridge is known as Antakarana, or the way of resurrection. And the existence of this bridge affirms the unbreakable link between man and God. It affirms the divine circulatory flow of all life and is evidence of humanity's slow journey back to the Father's home, our true spiritual origin. We are reminded that behind God's plan and underlying the forces of evolution, there exists an unknown, unseen, and unheard purpose which totally transcends human comprehension. And this purpose we affirm, or we must affirm, through our faith in the unity of life, in its common origin, and its common end, since we cannot know it. And through our faith, we thereby bridge, however tenuously, to these hidden potencies. This hidden purpose is synonymous with the will of that transcendent entity who created this planet and who aeons ago initiated its evolutionary process. We are all atoms in his body and integral parts of this cosmic evolutionary experiment. We are told that this purpose cannot be fulfilled until all units of all 7 kingdoms in nature are brought to their evolutionary consummation. And it is then that this 7-fold unity will be sacrificed to an even greater purpose, of which we can truly know nothing. The law of elevation, to which our keynote refers, governs the cohesion of units into a group. It draws them upwards into an existence which transcends individual self-consciousness. This elevating effect is made possible by the will of the Father and by that transcendent point of synthesis hidden within the human soul. It is this center which holds the divine potentiality of man and the promise of our group salvation, that is humanity's salvation, from the tyranny of separateness, ignorance, and hatred which plagues our planet at this time. It is by the power of the undying self that we travel through the death of material living and emerge into life. And this undying self is the soul. Through sacrifice and the relinquishing of self-interest, ambition, and all attachments, we contact the soul, become fused with soul consciousness. And in this consciousness, the unreal dies, so that the reality of the purpose of the group soul controls. For the individual, the consummation of this soul consciousness and of this relinquishment that it confers occurs at what the ageless wisdom refers to as the 4th initiation, when the individual is left entirely bereft, and even God appears to have forsaken them. This is the crisis which is symbolized by Jesus's crucifixion on the cross. And in this moment, despite having lost everything, this moment of total bereftment, the initiate maintains their consciousness fixed at the center of an even-armed cross. And through his suffering and through tremendous suffering, by keeping his consciousness fixed at the center of this cross, darkness cannot touch him, despite the fact that he is surrounded by it totally. And at this high point of tension, self-interest is totally eradicated, and the initiate becomes the way. In this moment, he demonstrates that death is merely the antechamber of resurrection, and he can rightfully repeat the occultly significant words of Christ, "I, if I be lifted up, will draw all men unto me. We all find ourselves at various stages upon the path, and the will to serve often precipitates crises, which bring us face to face with our limitations, our shortcomings, and our attachments. However, when our vision is clouded by darkness and the light cannot shine through, when we lose sight of the future and therefore also lose our way, we remember that there still remains that within us that is not marred by separateness, and that is pure and undying. And even the most spiritually misdirected of humanity also has within them the same divine potentiality that has flowered forth in the enlightened sages, masters, and bodhisattvas and saints for millennia. It is through this part of ourselves, this undying part, that we triumph over darkness and enter into light. Humanity as a group also contains within its soul a transcendent point of synthesis, a jewel or hidden revelation that links it up with the logoic life. This central life, though quiescent at this time, affirms the inevitability and the eventuality of the birth of soul consciousness on earth, and the futility of the forces of separateness which seek to delay it. It is through power, expressed as the will of the group, that this eventuality is actualized and brought down into the ritual of the daily life of humanity. It is the invocative peal of humanity, that reaching upwards towards divinity, which is focalized through the thanking men and women of the world, that these potent latencies are evoked. This invocation, when successful, will result in the initiation of the next era in humanity's evolution and the externalization of the heart of God on earth. Thank you.